Hello and welcome to Connect, the weekly podcast of the California MBA featuring one-on-one interviews with movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. I'm Susan Milazzo, CEO of the California MBA. I'm very happy that you could join us today. Before I welcome today's guest, I'd like to thank our 2024 President's Council sponsors. And these are companies that provide an incredible amount of financial support for our association, in large part so that we can continue to be the strong advocates for the real estate finance industry before the California State Legislature and our regulators. So please join me in thanking this year's President's Council sponsors. And those companies are AmeriHome, Arch MI, CMG Financial, Consolidated Analytics, Funding Shield, Guild Mortgage, and Western Alliance Bank. Thank you all so much for your support this year. We greatly appreciate it. And with that, I'm very happy to welcome my friend and colleague, Deb Dubois, who is president of the MBA Opens Doors Foundation, to today's podcast. Deb, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Always great to see you. I know I saw you at MBA event over the summer, and we'll see each other in a few weeks in Denver, but happy to have you on Connect. I usually start the podcast by asking, I'm always interested to know how people kind of got into the mortgage industry, because sometimes it's a really funny story. It's nobody ever says, I always wanted to be a mortgage banker. But you and I kind of have the same background in that we didn't come from the mortgage industry. We came from other kind of walks of life that got us here. So I'd love to share with our listeners how you came to MBA Opens Doors.
Yes. The path to where anyone ends up is almost always a circuitous run. And that's certainly true for me. But I think at its foundation, for me, it's always been about working for and working with mission-driven organizations. And so I started my career out of college working for a legal outplacement firm in DC, but kind of caught the quote unquote, I want to see the world bug when I was 24 and bought a one-way ticket to Prague, Czech Republic in the early 90s. And looking back, it seems kind of crazy since I had never been to Europe, didn't know anybody in Prague, and didn't have a job. And the country then called Czechoslovakia was about to split in two by the end of the year. So it was a little crazy looking back, but that said, that's really where the mission-driven part comes in. To make ends meet, I worked in marketing and business development for a large US law firm that had opened an office in Prague. But shortly after I arrived, I also started a bilingual magazine that focused on women's issues in post-communist Europe in 1992. And the idea was to create a conversation between the East and the West, and one that would or could surface the best that each had to offer. And I was fortunate enough to raise enough money to cover my costs and engage universities all over Central and Eastern Europe. But after 3 years, I decided it was time to head home, and I turned the magazine over to a professor at Charles University, and that was in 1995. But my time in Prague was transformational, and it really forced me to develop skills I didn't think I would or I could develop in a typical office setting. So for the next 30 years, it was about lifting others up, lifting people up and families up, working for social justice organizations, advocating for policies and actions that create equality, and working to create opportunities that make a difference in people's lives. So Opens Doors, with its direct impact on vulnerable families in need, was really a natural next step for me. And I think having that mission-driven focus, especially one that helps families keep their homes secure while caring for a critically ill or injured child, is something that leverages things from nearly every position I've ever had. And I like to think it makes a huge difference on individuals and on companies in the mortgage industry writ large.
What a fascinating story. I had no idea. That is so cool that you were such an entrepreneur and such a brave spirit at such a young age. Kind of
Or
gave
crazy.
yeah, one or the other. Looking back, we can say it's brave right now, right?
Right.
Well, I certainly hope that all of our listeners are familiar with the MBA Opens Doors Foundation, but I'd love for you just to kind of, for those that might not, I'd love to have you kind of outline some of the services that the foundation provides.
Absolutely. And I like to say that we are a small but mighty foundation, one that's working hard to build its profile within the real estate finance industry and to help more and more families every year we're able to do so. But we were founded in 2011 by the Mortgage Bankers Association as its charitable arm, and we were designed to be a support system for families caring for sick or injured children by providing mortgage and rental assistance grants while their child was in treatment. And this allows parents and guardians the ability to take leave, to take time to be with their child without worrying about losing their homes. And we make grants up to $2,000 a month to roughly 150 to 200 families every month whose children are in treatment at one of our 13 children's hospitals in our network. And we work directly with the hospital social workers and medical personnel who are really on the front lines helping families, many of whom are in a state of shock, having just been told their child is critically ill or has been critically injured in a horrific accident. I mean, imagine hearing that news and then having to get up and go to work, because if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you can't pay your mortgage or your rent at the end of the month. It's really an unimaginable situation for so many families across the country. And so no parent should have to choose. This is our belief. No parent should ever have to choose between their child and a housing payment. And no parent should ever have to wonder if they'll have a home to go to once their child's medical nightmare ends. So providing mortgage and rental grants keeps families that we as an industry help to put in their homes. We keep their housing secure. And in that, we help the recovery of a family who's going through a terrible crisis. Now, we also know that providing a mortgage or a rental grant doesn't solve a family's financial challenges. It doesn't relieve them of everything that they're facing. But we also know that providing a mortgage grant really does help a family get from the 30th of the month to the first of the next month and through that month. So we know that our housing grants are really critical, especially when you have a family with a child in treatment and they're looking at $40,000, $50,000 a year in out-of-pocket costs, even with the best of insurance, the best insurance possible. And that's because treatment may not be in your backyard. Treatment may be across the country. The kind of services that a child may need just may be outside of a hospital's network, of an insurance network. And so we also know that families who are two-income families go to one-income family, and one-income families can go to a no-income family at the drop of a hat, suddenly. So it's really important, and it's been important for the 17,000 families that we've helped so far. It's a really important program that keeps families whole, keeps families secure, and keeps our communities healthy.
I think any parent listening can appreciate literally the worst news you could get. Anything that has to do with your child being in any sort of peril or danger or sick, you'd rather wish it on yourself than on your child. And I think the MBA, great thing I've always recognized about MBA Opens Doors is, that rental and mortgage assistance in an unstable environment, right? So the family has been upended because of this diagnosis or this injury, but your assistance provides stability.
Yes.
One element of stability where they can still come back to to their home, which is just incredible. I'm such a huge fan of the foundation. I know I've seen several of the videos that we play at the MBA events that share some of the family stories. I'm sure you've heard a number of stories about families that have been helped by MBA Opens Doors. Can you give our listeners kind of an impact of what the foundation, has on these families?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I happily share the impact. I mean, every day, Susan, every day we receive notes from families and social workers that talk about the impact our grants have had on families. But to start, I think it's really important to situate those stories in the context of the demographics of our families, in the context of who it is we're helping, who our families really are. So just to let you know, 60% of the families that we help have a child under the age of 5 in the hospital for things like cardiac, respiratory, kidney, and liver disease. And a significant number of our Open Doors families have a child with cancer, chronic or sudden onset illness, and really severe and life-threatening complications at birth. And many of our families have a child that suffered a critical injury, such as a gunshot wound or a traumatic brain injury, or injuries suffered in car accidents that also have had a significant impact to a parent. So we've helped families who have a child in the hospital recovering from a car accident while both parents are also in the hospital. So it is, they're just unimaginable situations that these families are going through. And in nearly 1/3 of the families we help are single parent families. They're caring for other children or elderly parents, as well as a child in the hospital. And finally, 60% of our families make less than $60,000 a year, and they're facing thousands of dollars in medical expense.
Right.
There's just not enough left over for basic necessities, for rent or for mortgage at the end of the month. But I'll give you a couple of examples of the impact that we've had. In 2018 and 2019, we helped the family of 5-year-old Carlos Rolón in Boston. And Carlos had spent nearly a year at Boston Children's Hospital waiting for a new heart. And my goodness, you would have fallen in love with this little boy if you had just seen his smile and absorbed his 5-year-old energy, even while facing such uncertainty and trauma. But the smile on his mom, Sheena's face is very different than Carlos's face. For nearly the entirety of Carlos's hospital stay, Sheena slept on a cot at the end of his hospital room. And even though she had 2 other children at home, during the day, she drove an ambulance. She was a first responder. And at night, when she could, she picked up shifts at a retail store until she could no longer work the retail job. She was let go from the retail job because she had to be with Carlos to help him get through his hospital stay, to be there to meet with doctors, to talk with the nurses and the social workers. So the stress on her and her family was just enormous. But the stress of also staying positive in the company of a 5-year-old as he waited for a new heart, that was also enormous. So we were able to pay her rent, which allowed her to cut back on her hours as an ambulance driver. It allowed her to be with Carlos when the doctors made their rounds or when the nurses made their rounds. And if you can imagine a 5-year-old in a hospital room alone, tethered to tubes and cords with beeping machines around them, while you drive an ambulance to help another child or an injured person, I can't. It's an unimaginable situation that is the reality of thousands of families across America. But after we provided the rental assistance to Sheena, we received a little video, an iPhone video, which I wish I could share with you right now. But in the voice that only a 5-year-old has, he thanked us for helping his family. And I have to believe that that kind of generosity coming from and kindness and thoughtfulness coming from a 5-year-old will only pay it forward for other families. It'll only help future 5-year-olds to understand that there are good, kind, and generous people out there that are willing to help your family, even though they've never even met you. So,
Just
so
incredible.
clearly it's incredible, and it's so it fills your heart with joy. So, and then the other story I'll share really is one that has stayed with me for years. And this was a note that we received from a very young family named the Ridlin family. They received a grant right after their newborn George had to spend 10 weeks in the hospital. And I'm going to read this note from that we got from them, just because it's a really important note, and I think it's important to get it right. So this is the note that we got. We will always remember your kindness. In fact, the letter informing us of our selection for the grant is in George's baby book. And when he is older, we will tell him about the kindness of strangers and how they helped our family during a really challenging time. So for me, Susan, it's kind of hard to get more real than that. It's kind of hard to not feel the joy, to feel the commitment that we have to each other in communities. And I think that's a really important network to have. So those are just 2 of 17,000 stories that I could tell you, but they are 2 of the most impactful stories that stick with me as the president of the foundation. And I think that anybody who donates to the foundation, anybody who engages just by sharing a good word about the work that we do is helping us to help those families. They have a direct impact on the lives of families that you wouldn't normally have, but for the Opens Doors Foundation.
Just incredible. It must have the hard work, and I know you put in a lot of hard work to make this organization run. So much gratification when you get a message like that, right? Like, look, it's all worth it. We are helping these families, and this is like true, the true testimony to the work and effort that you and your leadership are putting into the success of the foundation. Thank you for sharing that, Deb. I know, fundraising for nonprofits, fundraising is always critical and it's never ending. What can companies do to support MBA Opens Doors Foundation in addition to cutting a check?
Right. Yeah, and especially during these challenging times, cutting a check is not always easy. And there are so many ways to help Opens Doors and help the families that benefit from our home grant program. So as you mentioned, writing a large check isn't easily done. It's just not something that either individuals or companies can simply do on an annual basis. We're fortunate to have a number of repeat donors year over year, but we're also really fortunate to have the commitment and the energy of people who simply want to engage with the foundation. So we definitely understand that cutting a check is not only possible, which is why we've put into place platforms that allow us to help create co-branded web-based campaign sites that have dedicated donation pages attached to them and dedicated donation portals, which really, it sounds like a little thing, but it makes running a campaign, especially an internal company campaign, so much easier when you don't have to run around collecting checks, where there's this encapsulated environment online that people can engage in, that they see the mission that they're trying to support, either from the corporate level or from a group of employees within a corporation. It's a wonderful platform. We've had more than 50 campaigns, internal company-led campaigns on our platform that has raised a little bit more than $3 million just in the last 5 years. So we're quite fortunate to have those campaigns and those technologies in place. But we work with companies who want to support Opens Doors, who believe in the concept of giving back to communities that they're in, that their employees are in, that the families that they've put into homes live and work in. So those platforms are really important. But here's a couple examples. So, for example, we work with Lennar Mortgage on their annual Spring Lennar Derby, which has Lennar teams across the country competing with each other to raise money, more money, the most money, to get their horse across the finish line. So in a 30-day period, Lennar employees, probably more than 400, I think we had more than 400 Lennar employees this year in a single 30-day period, make 900 transactions on our platform. So from that little description, you can tell that a good chunk of the donations are $5 donations. They're small dollar donations. And they're for fun, competitive campaigns. And the bottom line is that it has a very serious outcome, and that is helping families, stay in their homes. And we've worked with people like Janine Garrison at Berkadia to create a campaign that is attached to a Western Mortgagee conference. And that campaign is called WMAC Gives Back. And we created it last year. We rolled it out. We raised a little bit more than $30,000 last year. And we raised it from conference attendees who connect with our mission, who connect with the idea of helping families. And so that's a really important campaign, is a really important activity. We worked with CMG annually, but this past February, CMG created a leadership challenge. And we created the campaign site for that, the dedicated donation portal, which allowed leaders in the company to give to Opens Doors in a friendly sort of competitive nature. And we work every fall with the Radiant Group on their Radiant Opens Doors Opens Hearts campaign, which this year just kicked off this week. And it taps into the goodwill of hundreds of Radiant employees, associates, and vendors. And the nice thing about that is that the funds raised, again, anywhere from $5 to $500 from individuals, is actually going to be doubly matched. So there's going to be a double match on the total amount raised by Radian. So that will be a very, very nice campaign to help us feel comfortable about meeting demand in FY25. So, and we've also worked with small groups. We've worked with MBA's Impact Leadership Group, a group of young leaders in the mortgage industry who believe that being in a company, working within a company and within an industry, also comes with the responsibility of helping people in their communities. And that is a really wonderful group of people. It's led by Jackie Salazar and Ashley Arabinik from MBA, and it's just been great in terms of helping us spread the word and creating a fall fundraising campaign. And those campaigns raise anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. We've worked with CMBs. We work with the CCMS Philanthropic Committee. And in fact, I know that you interviewed Elizabeth Burnett and from Slack Capital, and she's one of the leaders, along with Marcy Thomas and Rich Pardo, who've really taken the CCMS Philanthropic Committee, to a national scale. And that's been a wonderful, wonderful campaign, and it's a year-long campaign. And you may recall, Susan, back in 2018, that you and I worked together on a campaign called Operation Coastal Cleanup. And one of my favorite things about that campaign was not just that we raised money to support Open Doors, but that we did good in the community. A whole group of us got together and cleaned up microplastics on the beaches of Coronado, if you recall. And that was just a really, really wonderful experience. And I have you to thank for that. So thank you for that. And thank you for leading the way. So it's really important. Every campaign, every donation, whether it's $5 donation or $5,000 donation, all of this is critical to our ability to meet demand going into FY25 and to have met the demand from 17,000 families that needed our help. So, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that there's really 100% return on investment when you give to the Opens Doors Foundation. And that's because the MBA pays 100% of the foundation's administrative expenses. And that means that 100% of what somebody gives or what a company gives goes straight to a family in need. And I would really challenge people to find a foundation that can have that kind of return on investment. So so those are some of the things that people can do. But the reality is, I'm here to bounce ideas off. I'm here to brainstorm. If somebody has the will and somebody has the desire to support Open Doors, I can guarantee you I've got the will and desire to help them meet that mission.
Well, thank you for all that. Great ideas and fun things to do. I do remember our Coastal Cleanup Beach Day. And, great way to kind of get all of your team together behind a wonderful charity. I think MBA Opens Doors is the industry's foundation, our industry's nonprofit. So if anybody that's listening is interested, you can contact the MBA Opens Doors Foundation, and Deb will be happy to work with you. Absolutely. So Deb, we are just a couple of weeks away from the big MBA convention in Denver. I will see you there. Can you share with our listeners what MBA Opens Doors events they should be looking for?
Yeah. So I should say the MBA Annual Convention is literally my favorite time of the year. It is an opportunity for the Opens Doors Foundation to meet with donors across the industry, across the country, folks and individuals that I normally would not have an opportunity to meet with. And so the convention is a really important part of our ability to build our profile, to build awareness, to talk about the foundation. So with that in mind, I want to invite everyone to our reception on Monday night. So the Opens Doors Foundation has a reception, and it's a donor reception, but I open it up to everybody, whether you're a donor or not. I believe that in some way you're supporting the foundation just by being in the mortgage industry. So I would welcome everyone to come to our reception on Monday night. We'll be recognizing two people, one with our Founders Award, the MBA Opens Doors Foundation Founders Award, and the other is our newly renamed David H. Stevens Spirit Award, which really captures the spirit and the vision that the late Dave Stevens had for the foundation, which, as many people know, was one of the founders of the foundation. So we're excited about that. And then on Tuesday morning, we're going to give out our big Community Champion Award at the general session, which will be along with, I think, Jane Fonda and Goldie Hawn are going to be at the general session on Tuesday morning. So please join us for that. And then finally, come visit us in the expo. Come to the Opens Doors Foundation booth. We'll talk about the foundation, talk about what we have. We'll, of course, have some tasty treats, a couple of games to play, and it should be a good time. And then this year, this is kind of special, Susan. I'm really excited about this. We are going to have puppy playtime on Monday afternoon between 3:30 and 5 at the Opens Doors booth in the expo. And we're working with a local Denver-based nonprofit that helps take care of animals, take care of dogs, get them adopted. And so that we're going to have a little puppy playtime. So come for a puppy hug. Come for a little doggy time. It'll be a lot of fun.
Speaking as a very proud dog mom, that's some tricky business there. I think that you're roping everybody in, but I love it because I'm like, I'm going to put whatever that is on my calendar right now. I may be driving home from Denver with a dog. My husband may be hearing about later. I'm not really sure. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. And I will see you in Denver. And for anyone listening, we have the MBA Opens Doors link to make a donation in the description for today's podcast. I encourage you to make a donation. As Deb has shared, any amount is appreciated. And Deb, thank you so much for being on Connect. It's been great.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Susan.
And thanks to all of you for joining us today. To access any of our past episodes, you can follow us on our YouTube channel. We're also available on SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. That's it for this week, and we'll see you next time on Connect.